Montenegro is 5,300 square miles. In that space, there's an island built entirely by hand, a canyon deeper than the Grand Canyon, a village that was deliberately drowned, and an olive tree that's been standing for 2,000 years. We're going to visit all of them. And everywhere else worth stopping. Montenegro is where gravity seems optional and history defies logic. The Tara River Canyon plunges 4,265 feet deep. That's deeper than the Grand Canyon in some places, making it Europe's deepest gorge. Meanwhile, Ostrog Monastery clings to a vertical cliff face 3,000 feet above sea level, with no visible structural support, as if someone just glued it to the rock. And in Biogradska Gora, trees have been growing completely undisturbed for over 1,000 years, creating one of Europe's last 3 primeval forests. But the engineering marvels get even wilder. Kotor's fortress walls snake straight up the mountain for 2.8 miles, creating one of the longest fortification systems ever built. The tiny village of Perast once commanded a naval fleet that rivaled Venice's power, despite having only 300 residents at its peak. And Skadar Lake literally changes countries depending on water levels. Sometimes it belongs mostly to Montenegro, other times mostly to Albania. Now let's explore the incredible places that make Montenegro so unforgettable. Did you know there's a canyon in Montenegro that plunges deeper than the Grand Canyon? Over 1,300 meters straight down, the Tara River Canyon carves through Durmitor National Park like the earth simply cracked open. And most people have never heard of it. You stand at the rim and the turquoise river below looks like a thin ribbon threading through walls of ancient limestone, framed by pine forests so green they almost glow. This place was sculpted 2 million years ago during the Ice Age, and the glaciers left behind 18 lakes scattered across 390 square kilometers of raw, untamed terrain. Locals still whisper about the Durmitor dragon, a mythical guardian said to roam these peaks. Sounds like folklore. But at dawn, when mist coils between the summits and the only sound is wind across cold stone, you almost believe it. The stone walls climb straight up the mountainside like a spine fused to rock. 4.5 kilometers of fortification, zigzagging over cliffs so steep you wonder how anyone built them without falling. That's Kotor, a city founded in the 3rd century BC that somehow still feels like it's daring gravity to disagree. You wind through narrow lanes barely wide enough for 2 people, past Venetian facades that haven't changed much since the Republic controlled this coast for 400 years. The scent of rosemary and dried oregano drifts from market stalls wedged between medieval stone. At the heart of it all, St. Tryphon Cathedral rises quietly, older than most European nations. But here's the thing. Time your visit for golden hour. The bay turns copper, the Adriatic deepens to ink, and those ancient walls glow like they're remembering every empire that tried to claim them. Did you know this place used to be a pirate hideout? Seriously. Where oligarchs and celebrities now sip cocktails behind private gates, 15th-century raiders once stashed plunder inside fortified stone walls. Sveti Stefan sits on a tiny island tethered to the mainland by a slender ribbon of sand, an isthmus so narrow the Adriatic laps at both sides as you walk across. The terracotta rooftops cluster together like a medieval painting someone forgot to age, all warm ochre against water so deeply blue it almost hurts. Princess Margaret vacationed here. So did plenty of European royalty drawn to those coral pink beaches. And yes, the sand really does blush pink. The whole island is now an exclusive resort, every ancient cottage reimagined into luxury suites. But stand on the mainland beach at golden hour, and none of that matters. Just light pouring over stone, and the Adriatic turning to liquid amber. Everyone calls it Europe's southernmost fjord. There's just one problem. It isn't one. Glaciers never touched this place. Rivers carved Boka Kotorska over millions of years, sculpting 28 kilometers of drowned canyon into the deepest natural harbor on the Adriatic. And honestly, that makes it stranger, more impressive. You round a bend by boat and sheer cliff faces rise on both sides, dark green mountains plunging straight into water so turquoise it looks unreal. The bay has been pulling in sailors since the Middle Ages, when fortified towns clung to its edges and warships sheltered in its depths. Stone walls still climb impossible hillsides. Churches still perch on the waterline. At golden hour, warm light floods the gorge and the whole thing turns molten. Cliffs glowing amber, water holding the sky like glass. 60 meters deep and perfectly still. Did you know this island shouldn't exist? Not geologically, not naturally. It was built entirely by hand. In 1452, two fishermen hauled up a glowing icon of the Virgin Mary from the seabed, and their community decided the spot deserved a church. One problem: there was no land. So they made some. For centuries, locals dropped rocks and old ships into the shallows, stone by stone, voyage by voyage, until an island rose from the Adriatic. Today, a 17th-century church stands on what generations of hands created, its walls lined with 68 paintings by Boka Kotorska, and over 2,000 silver votives left by sailors' wives praying for safe returns. Every July, the tradition continues. Boats circle the island and families hurl stones into the water, keeping the land alive. You approach by boat across turquoise glass, and this white chapel just emerges from nowhere, defiant against the deep. Did you know there are only 3 primeval forests left in all of Europe? One of them is right here, tucked inside 54 square kilometers of Montenegrin wilderness. Biogradska Gora has never been logged. Not once. Trees over 400 years old rise from earth so damp and ancient you can smell centuries of decay beneath your boots. Rich, dark, almost sweet. You walk through, and the forest closes around you like a cathedral no architect could dream up. Mediterranean species tangle with alpine flora in the same canopy, a combination you'd barely find anywhere else on the continent. At dawn, mist lifts off the glacial lake, Montenegro's largest, and the water holds every shade of green the surrounding trees offer it. The silence here isn't empty. It hums with something older than memory, older than borders, older than the word forest itself. 300 Dalmatian pelicans nest here, the largest breeding colony in all of Europe. And most people have never even heard of this lake. Skadar sprawls across 530 square kilometers of the Balkans, a vast sheet of green water pressed between mountains that rise sharp and sudden from its edges. You arrive at dawn, and mist clings to the surface like something alive. The air hits you. Earthy, wet, laced with wild vegetation and mountain crispness. Ancient fortresses crumble on tiny islands, remnants of Illyrians, Romans, Ottomans, each layer dissolving into the next. Then, a shadow passes overhead. Massive wings, impossibly slow. A pelican wingspan wider than you are tall, gliding toward water so still it mirrors everything and reveals nothing. Did you know that one of Europe's last unexplored canyons wasn't even discovered until 1965? The Canyon of Navidio stayed hidden for centuries. 3 kilometers of vertical limestone walls plunging 1,200 meters deep, and nobody mapped it. Ancient tribes believed this was a gateway to the underworld. Honestly, standing at its edge, you understand why. The passage narrows until the walls nearly touch, and turquoise water carves through rock so old it predates memory. Early morning is when the magic happens. Sunlight spills over the rim in sharp columns, turning stone gold while everything below stays cool and shadowed. 1,350 steps. That's what stands between you and one of the most complex defensive structures ever built. The Fortress of Kotor doesn't sit on the mountain. It crawls up it, 4.5 kilometers of stone walls cascading down the slopes like the spine of something ancient and immovable. Venetians, Byzantines, Ottomans, everyone wanted this place and nobody could take it easily. You feel that climbing up. Your hands press against walls worn glass smooth by centuries of soldiers, traders, and storms. Each switchback reveals more of the bay below, water turning from deep navy to pale jade. Then you reach the summit at sunrise, and golden light floods the ramparts. 1,000 years of defiance, and the stone still holds. Did you know there's a canyon in Europe that actually runs deeper than sections of the Grand Canyon? The Tara River has carved a gorge over 1,300 meters deep, 4,300 feet of sheer cliff plunging straight down. Millions of years of patient erosion, and the result is staggering. You stand on the Đurđevića Tara Bridge, and the river below looks almost unreal. Turquoise, so vivid it seems digitally enhanced, threading between walls of gray limestone draped in dense green forest. This entire watershed holds UNESCO Biosphere Reserve status, protecting ecosystems found nowhere else in the country. During World War II, Yugoslav partisans used these impossible gorges as strongholds against Axis forces. Even armies couldn't conquer this terrain. As afternoon light slants into the canyon, the water glows electric against ancient stone. Did you know that beneath a casual Montenegrin beach town, there are ruins of a Roman villa from the 3rd century AD? 1,700 years ago, this coastline was a strategic outpost of empire. Today, Petrovac wraps that ancient history in sun-warmed stone and the smell of grilled seafood drifting from beachside taverns. You walk a promenade lined with cafes, then stumble onto Roman foundations just meters from the turquoise water. The town itself takes its name from a 12th century church dedicated to St. Peter, tucked quietly among the cliffs. Dramatic limestone walls frame the beach on both sides, draped in wild Mediterranean green. At sunset, golden light spills across the whole scene. Ancient stone and modern life glowing the same warm amber. 2,000 years of history, barefoot in the sand. The Phoenicians founded this place 2,500 years ago. Let that sink in. Before Rome was an empire, before Venice existed, Budva was already here. A trading port on the Adriatic where merchants haggled over salt and silver. You walk through the old town gates, and those ancient stone walls close around you, narrow lanes worn smooth by millennia of footsteps. The smell of grilled seafood drifts from candlelit restaurants tucked into medieval archways. But here's where Budva gets interesting. Step outside those fortress walls after dark and you hit one of the Mediterranean's wildest party scenes. Thumping bass, rooftop bars, neon reflected on black water. 25 centuries of history by day, and a city that doesn't sleep by night. At sunset, both worlds blur together. Ancient stone glowing amber while the first beats of the evening start to pulse. Picture a Yugoslav naval base where submarines once lurked in concrete bunkers. Now imagine superyachts worth hundreds of millions of euros floating in those same waters. That's Tivat. In 2006, developers took an Austro-Hungarian military harbor, a place built for warships and defense, and turned it into the largest marina in the Adriatic, with berths stretching long enough to dock vessels over 250 meters. You walk along the promenade, and the contrast hits you immediately. Cold War architecture sits beside polished teak decks and champagne lounges. A salty breeze carries the scent of grilled branzino from waterfront restaurants while mountains rise sharply behind the whole scene. At sunset, those peaks catch fire in copper and gold, their reflections rippling across a harbor that forgot it was ever at war. Did you know that the largest lake in the Balkans can shift from turquoise to deep emerald green in a single afternoon? Welcome to the village of Skadar, where the water decides its own mood. This place dates back to the 15th century. Once the capital of the Zeta kingdom, now a handful of stone houses with red-tiled roofs dozing along the shore. You arrive early morning, and mist clings to the surface like something alive. Wild lavender saturates the air. Then the birds. Europe's largest bird reserve sprawls across these waters, and flamingos wade through the shallows as if they own the place. Honestly, they do. No crowds, no noise, just the soft lap of color-shifting water against ancient stone, and a silence so complete it almost hums. In 1862, a handful of Montenegrin fighters held these walls against an Ottoman force that outnumbered them for days. Not with superior weapons or reinforcements, but with sheer knowledge of every ridge, every blind spot, every place where the mountains funneled attackers into impossible positions. Keuka's fortress was built for exactly this, a 15th-century stronghold perched where the terrain itself becomes a weapon. You feel it the moment you arrive. The valley drops away beneath you, a river threading through it like a silver vein, and the surrounding peaks close in like sentinels. After a rain, the walls carry this earthy scent of wet stone and moss, centuries compressed into something you can almost taste. Come at golden hour. The fortress silhouette burns against the sky, and that defiance still lingers in every crumbling wall. A century ago, Austro-Hungarian warships sat where $100 million superyachts now float. Porto Montenegro was a military naval base. Torpedoes were assembled here. Submarines docked in these very waters. Today, it holds over 400 yachts, making it one of the largest superyacht marinas in the entire Mediterranean. The transformation happened fast, too. Construction began in 2006, and within years, stone arsenals became designer boutiques and Michelin-worthy restaurants. You walk along the waterfront and the old military architecture is still there. Thick fortress walls, iron moorings, weathered stone, but now framed by polished teak decks and champagne terraces. The smell of salt air mingles with fresh Mediterranean cooking drifting from every direction. Come at golden hour. Mountains behind you catch fire while the marina turns liquid gold, and warships feel like another lifetime entirely. Did you know there's a town in Montenegro where the mosque and the Orthodox Church share the same narrow street, and neighbors switch between Albanian and Montenegrin mid-sentence without even thinking about it? That's Kuzinje. Tucked against the highest peaks of the Proklitije range, this small settlement has been quietly blending cultures since Ottoman traders first carved routes between the Adriatic and the Balkan interior 5 centuries ago. You arrive to stone houses with wooden balconies leaning over cobbled lanes, wild thyme scenting the mountain air. The dialect here is its own creature, a fusion born from generations of coexistence rather than conquest. Come in early morning, when mist clings to the Prokliti and the only sounds are river water over rock and the first call to prayer echoing against ancient stone. The trail winds downhill through dense pine forest, the air thick with damp earth and decaying leaves, and then the trees part. Water so dark it looks like spilled ink. Kurno Lake earns its name, Black Lake, because the organic material dissolved in its depths absorbs light, turning the surface nearly opaque under overcast skies. It's eerie and magnetic all at once. You crouch at the shoreline and the surrounding peaks reflect perfectly, bright green forest meeting that impossible darkness in a mirror so sharp you lose track of which way is up. Carved by glaciers during the last ice age, this lake stretches 3.5 kilometers through a valley that time seems to have forgotten. Come at dawn. Mist lifts off the black surface like something breathing, slow and ancient. There is an entire village beneath this water. Houses, streets, the foundations of a 16th-century community. All deliberately drowned in 1975 when engineers dammed the Piva River. During low water levels, you can still glimpse the ruins rising from the depths like ghosts refusing to stay buried. The monastery was relocated stone by stone before the flood, but everything else went under. And here is the strange part. What replaced that village is almost impossibly gorgeous. Water so turquoise it looks tropical, ringed by sheer cliffs that plunge straight down. Morning mist drifts across the surface, and somewhere below, a church sleeps. Did you know that some rivers carve paths so perfectly curved they look designed? Rijeka Krnojevica winds through Montenegro's green valleys in sweeping S-bends so precise they seem impossible. Nature sculpting with the patience of centuries. You stand at the viewpoint above and the emerald water mirrors everything. Hills, sky, stone. A 15th-century village clings to the banks below, its old bridge arching between two worlds. This was once a vital trading post, where goods moved along these serpentine curves. Now the only traffic is light itself, bending golden across the water at dusk. While most of Europe shivers through February in shades of gray, one Montenegrin town erupts in gold. Herceg Novi holds the world's largest collection of mimosa trees, and when they bloom, the entire city transforms. You walk narrow Ottoman-era streets and the sweetness hits you first. Honey-thick floral air wrapping around every corner. Yellow cascades tumble over stone walls, line the coastal promenade, spill down stairways carved 6 centuries ago. Founded in 1382, this place has worn Ottoman, Venetian, and Austrian faces. But come February, it wears only one color. Radiant, defiant gold. A freshwater snail the size of your forearm, 30 centimeters long, lurking beneath emerald waters that Romans once navigated for trade. The Skadar River stretches 38 miles through Montenegro, and its ecosystem harbors creatures you'd never expect in a European waterway. Early morning is when this place reveals itself. Mist lifts off turquoise currents, traditional fishing boats rest along green banks, and Dalmatian pelicans, Europe's largest colony, erupt skyward in formation. Ancient fortresses still line the shores, crumbling reminders of centuries of commerce flowing through here. But your eyes keep drifting back to that impossibly green water, alive with secrets underneath. Did you know there's a relic of St. John the Baptist locked behind monastery walls here? And the public sees it only once a year. Ostrog Monastery holds that kind of gravity. Built in 1701, this wasn't just a place of worship. Prince-bishops governed Montenegro from these corridors, making it the beating heart of an entire nation's identity. You walk through heavy carved wooden doors into a stone courtyard where incense hangs thick in the morning air, curling through shafts of soft light between the trees. Invasions, empires, political upheaval. This place outlasted them all. Have you ever walked into a place that was already ancient when the first humans stood upright? The Cave of Lipa stretches back over 2 million years, carved by water long before anything resembling us existed. You step inside and the cool, damp air wraps around you instantly, carrying that deep mineral smell of wet stone. Chambers rise 50 meters overhead, stalactites glistening like frozen rain in the dim light. Prehistoric humans sheltered here, possibly performed rituals in these same halls. 2 kilometers of passages wind deeper into the dark, and each step takes you further back through time itself. Most capital cities chase away their wildlife. Podgorica invites it in. Look up from any downtown street and you'll spot them. White storks, dozens of them, nesting on rooftops and utility poles right alongside satellite dishes and air conditioning units. Their beaks clatter like castanets across the skyline, a soundtrack you'd never expect from a European capital. Founded as a Roman trading hub over 2,000 years ago, this compact city layers ancient ruins beneath modern facades. The Millennium Bridge arcs over the Moracha River, its cables glowing white at dusk while storks settle into their nests above the city lights. Did you know there's a beach town in Montenegro that throws an annual festival celebrating cigarettes? Welcome to Sudamore. Every summer, this 1.5-kilometer stretch of Adriatic coastline honors the region's deep tobacco heritage with its cigarette festival. Part absurd, part charming, entirely Montenegrin. Once a quiet fishing village, the town reinvented itself in the 1960s as a sun-soaked playground. You smell it before you see it. Salt air tangled with smoke from seafood grills lining the shore. Mountains rise sharply behind you while the water stretches turquoise ahead. At sunset, the whole sky bleeds amber over the Adriatic, and the party's just getting started. Palm trees have no business growing here. And yet, walking through Militar Park, towering fronds sway overhead in the salt-tinged breeze. One of the rare spots in Europe where subtropical species thrive alongside Mediterranean pines and centuries-old cypresses. This was King Nicholas I's private summer garden, designed around 1920 as a royal escape draped in botanical extravagance. Plants gathered from across the globe line winding stone pathways that spill toward the Adriatic. You hear it before you see it. The rustle of exotic leaves mixing with distant waves. At golden hour, the light filters through those impossible palms, painting everything amber. Montenegro revealed itself as a country where every turn holds a story, from ancient fortresses to hidden coves that feel untouched by time. If you want to keep exploring Europe's best-kept secrets with me, subscribe. Which of these places called to you most?